Skirk over here. Hey everybody, and hey to you, Bossman. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying the debate. I am too. As for debates generating into name-calling, I can honestly say that I've had high expectations for this conversation so far, and I see no reason to change those expectations. To jump right in, you talk about Hoyt and Miller not defending Christianity so much as fighting off Christian pseudoscience and racism. Specifically, you say they can agree to disagree on the whole God thing. First of all, you raise an important point. I want to be clear that I totally support those efforts, and as long as there's going to be religion, it's vitally important that there be people out there like Ken Miller providing a voice of reason. I don't want to come across as downplaying the importance of that role. On the other hand, this is, strictly speaking, a debate about the existence of God, and I think there's something telling here. I can really relate to Ken Miller, I think at least, because my history as a theist is full of his sort of rhetoric defending science, especially, and I looked at him as sort of a hero, to be honest. Even Lee Strobel wasn't nearly as faithfully rational as Ken Miller. Strobel wanted too badly, I think, to make it easy to believe. On the other hand, I can also relate to his willingness to agree to disagree, as you put it. Now, I won't presume to speak for Miller, that would be very conceited of me. But for me, this willingness sprang ultimately from my knowledge of the fact that I really had no choice. I could argue against the intelligent design advocates, as does Ken Miller, because I knew they were wrong, and I could articulate why I knew they were wrong, even if people didn't always understand. I couldn't do that to the atheist. Their position was unassailable to me. I mean, there were arguments that people were using, but I just knew too much and respected reason too much to resort to those. To me, Ken Miller represents a very thin minority, a knife's edge, really, of people who really understand the issues from a theistic perspective. I mean, William Lane Craig is an intellectual, although a lot of times he's a hack, but Miller really gets it, if you know what I'm saying. I flatter myself to say that when I was a theist, especially toward the last couple of years of that, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago now, I stood with Ken Miller on that knife's edge. And I agreed to disagree too. And that's really the point. When you get to that level of discourse and respect for reason, at least if you see things the way I did and the way that I suspect Ken Miller does, you can't push the line forward for theism anymore. At best, you can hold your ground, and you can see how that turned out in my case. Dawkins and Dennett aren't so accommodating, it's true. But simultaneously, on the one hand, it's not so hard for them to push forward as it is for him, and on the other hand, it's not so easy for them to just hold their ground as it is for him. Let me explain. Their position, and I sympathize with this position, is that religion is, at best, an element of chaos interfering with our ability as a species to achieve our own best interests, even to perceive our own best interests. If we all just held hands, us intellectuals, atheists and theists, and said, let's just go after the dangerous ones, like the racist fundies and the terrorists of the world, the ones who teach bad science to innocent kids and subjugate women, and so on, wherever we wanted to draw that line, the atheist would eventually have to become a hypocrite. Because what happens after we get rid of all the so-called bad religious people? So many of these so-called good ones will still be using books that are, in all honesty, when read from front to back, disgustingly barbarous. How long will it take before a new generation of violent, dangerous religion emerges and schisms from this new, meeker version that we create by somehow converting all the fundies? And, even if we didn't have those holy books, even if we started from scratch, simply by creating this sort of protected realm that we call religion in public discourse, we're creating a haven for this sorts of things to grow and just kind of fester. In the words of Voltaire himself, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. I'm sorry to have so belabored a point that you said wasn't even really important, but to me I think it sort of is. When you talk about Hoyt and Miller agreeing to disagree while Dawkins and Dennett are more aggressive, it's important for someone in my position to admit you're not wrong about that. But you and I see that same situation from different vantage points. And it's the reason that I have my vantage point is what I'm trying to get across to you, which is that, you know, there's a reason that Ken Miller is so accommodating. It's because from where he's standing he has no choice. And there's a reason that Dawkins and Dennett are so aggressive and so persistent, because from where they stand they have no choice. To answer your final questions, why not a deistic God? Well, I see the question as more, why a deistic God? If I try to explain in detail why I feel that way, it'll take a long time, first of all, and I'll be retreading the ground that I cover in my debate with Rational Roundtable. If you want that detail, I recommend you check out the last video in this series, which I will link here. Looks good, yeah, right there. But to cover it just in brief, when we look at what might reasonably be inferred about the origins of the universe, there doesn't seem to be much room for a consciousness. At best, there certainly doesn't seem to be any particularly good reason to infer a consciousness. It's not even clear if consciousness can function in the type of space-time that would exist outside of the universe, if you could even call it space-time. And again, I get into more detail in my response to Rational Roundtable. What philosophical work have I read on the nature of God? Well, lots. As for the two names mentioned, I haven't read a whole lot of David Hume, but I'm generally familiar with his positions. In fact, it just happens that I refer to him in that video. And I'm generally familiar, you know, with what he has to say. As for Voltaire, I've been a fan of his for a long time, and I recommend this book right here, Portable Voltaire. It is edited by Ben Bay Redman and published in 1949 by Viking Press. If this isn't in print anymore, which is a distinct possibility, I'm sure you can find something similar out there. Voltaire's position on God is, as you say, deistic, with maybe a pantheistic bent, pretty consistent with the cutting edge of intellectual progress in his time, and I wouldn't go so far as to call it outdated. But I would say that today our vantage on the universe is a little broader, and we have observed and inferred and deduced things that had not been observed, induced, or deduced in Voltaire's day. And, you know, that information that we have access to now, that perspective, suggests nothing so much as that whatever is out there waiting to be discovered as the origin of our universe, as the secret behind the curtain, It's far more bizarre and remarkable than anything that can be described by a word like God. Until next time.